Ni hao guys, this is the Jade Palace, a channel where we explore modern mixed martial arts from the angle of traditional martial arts. And today we continue our career breakdown of the best representative for TMA in MMA, who coincidentally just happens to be the greatest fighter the sport has ever seen, George St-Pierre. Let's get into it. Number 2. Justin Brookman. The commentary on this one immediately reminds me of why I decided to start this channel in the first place. The commentators keep concentrating on George's athleticism and attributing all of his success with wrestling to it.
Fight St-Pierre, unbelievable athlete, strong guy.
George St-Pierre is such an athlete.
Yeah, here we go.
And it's just extremely impressive athleticism. He just muscles his way through anything because he's just such an incredible athlete. It's not even funny, you know? Look at that. Look at the athleticism, the balance that George St-Pierre has. George is such a freaky athlete that he can pretty much do anything from any position. This kid has got athletic ability like I've never seen before.
And while there's no doubt it plays its part, I just find it to be, well, frankly kind of a boring thing to be obsessed with. I mean, I understand there must be a segment of MMA audience that are general sport fans, who find those questions of who's the strongest and the fastest fascinating. But to me as a martial arts nerd, athleticism is the least interesting aspect of a fight to pay attention to. So whenever George performs or defends a takedown, and those guys keep referring to his athletic ability, I have this small outcry inside like, no, of all the things that are relevant, why do you keep talking about that when his success is better attributed to any number of things like precision, timing, balance, footwork, understanding position, reading his opponent, recognizing the energy in contact. In short, any number of things that have to do with actual skill and not just physical qualities. Here's a perfect example. Look at this and listen to what those guys are saying.
I mean, on any lesser athlete, that was a takedown. Look at that. That wasn't even a takedown. That was like, bitch,
power.
Get down.
That was power.
I mean, was it? Sure, no doubt about it. Why though would you talk about this and keep talking about this of all things? To reiterate for the umpteenth time, cardio and conditioning are important parts of training? Well, thanks for nothing then, Captain Obvious. What would we do without you? Just try projecting it from martial arts onto classic arts like painting or music. Imagine you want your piano teacher to show you how to imitate a famous composer's style, show you the typical cadences and progressions, how they like to arpeggiate their chords, construct the bass line, etc. And the music teacher instead just goes on repeating, "Oh, but it's so beautiful, he was such a genius, don't you see how great this is?" I mean, sure. There's time and place to admire unique natural talent, but isn't it much more important to look at the lessons we can learn from it? Alright, let's move on. I don't want to get stuck nor to be too harsh on those guys. For one thing, they're commentating in real time. For another, this is GSP's very early career, and at this point to them, he's just some schmo who hadn't yet proven himself to be more than a random jock. And also, it's the earlier era of MMA in general. So it's not about giving this particular commentators hard time, they do an okay job given all the above. Rather, it was just too good an opportunity to share with you from the very beginning one of the things that drove me to start with this channel. Don't get me wrong, there are a bunch of analysts who are very knowledgeable about the sport and in many aspects far more advanced as martial artists than I am, and who pay a lot of attention to the minutiae of fighting interactions. It's just that, coming from the sport side of things, they often seem almost colorblind or borderline indifferent to some important aspects that we in traditional schools emphasize from day one. Number 3. Travis Galbraith. 4 seconds into the fight, George already takes the guy down off of his kick. To me it looks like a pretty much textbook single to double, but of course what do I know, I have no expertise in the sport of freestyle wrestling. On the other hand, what I can comment on as a traditional Kung Fu student is how St-Pierre starts working to compromise his opponent's balance from the moment that leg touches him. This is important because the concept of working with the point of contact is often misunderstood as only referring to hands or forearms, And then from this fundamental error you get a full set of other typical problems in a skill set, like deliberately chasing the hands, pursuing the striking game when it's time to grapple and vice versa, concentrating only on hands in one's training and not paying enough attention to other aspects, or worst of all, deciding that your style completely consists of one thing only and anything else you have to bring in from other arts based on different principles and body mechanics. GSP, on the other hand, as I hope to show you through this series, is really good at incorporating new things, but not as separate entities, rather as add-ons that go along with and complement very organically the base that he already has. And so, here for example, long before he switches to a specific technique of a double leg takedown that he uses to finish the sequence, he prepares the conditions for it to work by disrupting his opponent's balance from the first connection. He uses whatever point of contact he can get at every stage to return the opponent his own energy. First, it's a point of contact on his hip, and notice how he moves into that, so before the hands even got into the mix, the guy's equilibrium is already upset slightly. Then it's the hand grabbing the shin at mid-range, then moving close for a classic single, then switching to double, adding more points of contact, again on very different parts of the body for both, and at every step searching for those bridges into his opponent's dantians or centers of mass that would allow him to control the rest of the body. Also, let me point out Travis's key mistake in defending this takedown. He folds into this point, and often if you ask people about the concept of the dantian, not only they don't have a satisfactory explanation for what it is, but even the location is very vague, like, oh, it's somewhere in the stomach area, I guess. Well, if it is in the abstract stomach area, then this is what you get. The whole idea behind the lower dantian is that it's the point of maximum pressure that all the yin meridians, all the kinetic chains formed by your flexor muscles condense towards. Therefore, working with that point and those pathways allow you to connect your body into what feels like a solid monolith that is very difficult to break apart from the outside, while it still maintains fluidity inside. Condensing to this point, however, a point that's significantly above the dantian, does the exact opposite. It disconnects parts of the body from each other and creates a very convenient target for your opponent to attack and go right through. Number 4. Thomas Denny, 357 of the first round. Once again, notice the multi-dimensional approach to wrestling by George that will become a powerful tool for him throughout his career. He initiates the exchange by going in sagittally, reaching for a leg. When it fails, switches to the horizontal rotation, so already mixing up two planes, but in this case sequentially rather than simultaneously, which is fairly textbook so far. But if you pay close attention, you'll see this takedown also has a frontal element to it, this rotation right here, and while it's not enough in itself to actually achieve anything, in combination with the horizontal force it makes all the difference that George needs. So the lesson here, multi-dimensional force is not just a sum of separate forces it includes, but effectively a multiplier, creating a tornado of spinning and rotating energy vectors that are much harder to defend in combination. 447 of the second round. A takedown at the beginning of the second. Another thing to pay attention to early that will become very much of a factor later in GSP's skill set, the lack of a visible switch going through ranges from striking right into wrestling seamlessly. It might not look like much here because there was no prolonged exchange and it's also kind of awkward at this point, leaving much to be desired in terms of refinement. But the blueprint is there, both in terms of George's mentality and body mechanics, and this is something very much akin to the traditional martial arts sensibility. Number 5. Pete Spratt, 446 of the first round. This is a small thing, and I don't know that George necessarily did it on purpose, rather than it just happened this way, but I want to show it anyway, because it's another interesting and unorthodox example for the overall theme. So Spratt throws a front kick, George squats, probably thinking about a dive for the leg, But what ends up happening is, at this point Pratt's leg is right over St-Pierre's shoulder, and this is the moment George starts to get up again from the squatted position. Well, squatted position sounds terrible, so let's go on and take a frivolity to call it Mabu, a horse rider stance. It's probably a little bit of a stretch, but sounds much cooler and immediately gives you that kung fu flavor. Anyhow, George moves up, catching Pratt's leg with his shoulder a split second before he's able to retract it. This upsets Pratt's balance once again ever so slightly, but enough to make a difference for the immediate takedown. I just wanted to spend a minute on this small episode, since in an interesting way it highlights the same concept. Point of contact is not just hand to hand, it can be any point of your body against any point of opponent's body, and still the same principles apply. 1. If you recognize how those points connect to respective centers of mass, it can be used to shift opponent's equilibrium, which creates an opening for an immediate attack. 2. The reason why I said it almost doesn't matter if George did it on purpose or it was more of a coincidence. Understanding a specific point and working with it, of course, opens up an order of magnitude more possibilities. But at the same time, as long as you maintain the pen, the spherical quality, whenever and wherever the initial collision occurs, you will be ready for it. Alright guys, let us press pause for a little bit. After all, George's full career includes 26 fights, and we can't possibly hope to get through all of it in one sitting. For now, let's sum up today's lessons very briefly. First, don't stop at the surface level explanations of fighters' success by athleticism. Look at the conditions they've created to allow athleticism to work. Second, the dantian, or as modern strength coaches like to call it, the core, is not abstract stomach area. Learn to recognize this specific point and the mechanism behind it. Third, three-dimensional power is more than just a sum of its elements. If not physically, then definitely psychologically, confusing the hell out of your opponent. Fourth, maintain the pen energy on the whole surface of your body and be prepared to work with any point of contact whenever your opponent gives you one. Remember those lessons the next time you go training. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, kindly project your chi towards the like and subscribe buttons. Also, you know by now that yours truly is on a mission to educate people and dispel myths about traditional martial arts, so if you think it's a noble cause and want to participate, there is no better way than to share this on your social media. And if you're seriously committed, you can even become a supporter of the channel. Which, by the way, also allows you to watch original, less heavily edited cuts. Finally, and most importantly, if you want to come and learn Kung Fu with us, all the links to the school are below. And remember,
your defense. Points come. Concentrate, focus, power. Remember balance. Make good fight.